She's wet herself. So clean her up.
I was shocked when I received a call from my sister-in-law while shopping at the supermarket. She said she had left her 2-year-old daughter at our house and gone on a trip.
She's dirty, so I left her in the bathroom. Take care of it.
She hung up the phone while humming a tune. Feeling overwhelmed with anxiety, I rushed home in a panic. When I opened the bathroom door, I found my niece floating in the bathtub. I lifted her up, limp, and resolved to get back at my sister-in-law. I am a 28-year-old housewife, and I married Jason, who is 2 years older than me, 3 years ago. My husband is the heir of a large general hospital and an excellent surgeon. He is busy every day with surgeries, consultations, and conferences, and rarely comes home.
Nancy, I can finally take a day off tomorrow. How about we go see a movie together?
But whenever he has any free time, he always tries to spend it with me. It's a bit embarrassing to say, but I think we're a pretty close couple. The only regret is that we haven't been blessed with children. My in-laws strongly desire a successor, and I feel pressured by it.
Nancy, you're free again today, aren't you?
That day too, my sister-in-law came over to our house in the morning. Jason's sister, Amy, is 26 years old. I sighed inwardly, thinking, here we go again. When we first got married, I welcomed my sister-in-law's visits. Family relationships are important, and back then, it wasn't so frequent. But at some point, she started coming over almost every day. Her husband is a long-distance truck driver who is rarely home, sometimes not coming back until late at night. While I was puzzled by her somewhat brazen behavior, she eventually took our house key without permission and even made a duplicate. You can't just make a copy without asking and come in as you. Please return the key.
No way. I made it just for that. You said I could come over anytime before, didn't you?
I meant within reasonable limits. You're an adult. You should understand that. No matter how many times I warned her, she ignored me and kept the spare key. Even after my husband scolded her, she would still come over unannounced.
I brought my daughter Emma today. She hasn't had breakfast yet. Make something, will you?
Ignoring my words, she entered the living room, and beside her stood my 2-year-old niece, looking gloomy. Oh, Emma is hungry again today. I hurried to the kitchen counter. The reason I couldn't completely reject Amy was because I was worried about my niece, who wasn't being properly cared for.
It's such a hassle doing housework with just the two of us. Nancy, you're lucky. You can practice parenting with Emma.
Amy sat on the sofa, laughing loudly, while my niece sat next to her, silently looking down. Still, neglecting your child's meals is unacceptable.
Ha! You're just a childless housewife. You can't even produce an heir.
Angered by my advice, Amy started yelling, saying a woman who can't have children has no value.
Well, I'll be the one to produce an heir. All the inheritance from the hospital will be mine. Why did I even have a girl? I wanted a boy.
Stop it. Emma can hear you.
It's fine. It's the truth.
She glared at Emma next to her and nudged her with her elbow, as if telling her to go away. Seeing my niece on the verge of tears, I hurriedly placed the freshly made breakfast on the table. Emma. Breakfast is ready. You like toast with a fried egg on top, right? My niece gave a relieved smile at my words. Oh, I'm really worried about Emma. That's why I can't completely push Amy away. I was at a loss. One morning, amidst these everyday events,
She's wet herself, so clean her up.
I was shopping at the supermarket when I suddenly received a call from my sister-in-law.
I'm going on a trip for 3 days starting now. Emma's dirty, so I threw her in your bathroom. Take care of it.
What? What are you talking about? Where are you going? I tried to get more details, but Amy hung up the phone while humming a tune. Emma. She must be so scared being alone. I hurried back home. Her clothes must be wet from the accident, and she could catch a cold. I burst into the bathroom, searching for my niece. Then, a piercing scream, louder than I'd ever made, escaped my throat. We reuse bathwater for laundry, so the tub still had quite a bit of water in it. And there, floating in the water, was my niece. Emma. Open your eyes. With trembling hands, I pulled her out of the tub, calling her name repeatedly. But her face was pale, and she lay limp, not breathing. I immediately called an ambulance and rushed her to the hospital. I can't believe this is happening. I tearfully explained to my husband what had occurred when he arrived at the hospital.
This is beyond horrible. Where did Amy go?
Enraged by his sister's irresponsibility, my husband lost his temper. As a doctor, I left the hospital matters to Jason and focused on tracking down my sister-in-law. First, I went to my in-laws' house, explained the situation, and borrowed the key to Amy's house. When I visited her house, not only did I find out her travel destination, but I also discovered a series of horrifying things. I can't believe she was doing this. I will never forgive her. Furious, I swore to avenge Emma. Amy said the trip would be for 3 days. During that time, I will expose all her wrongdoings. I contacted a lawyer and Child Protective Services and gathered evidence at my sister-in-law's house. After a hectic few days, the day of Amy's return finally arrived. I was sure she would come to our house to pick up my niece, so I waited. Sure enough, she showed up.
I'm back. How was your 3-day parenting experience? You must have learned a lot. You should be grateful.
Amy barged into the living room with a smug attitude. I sat on the sofa, glaring at her coldly. Where have you been? Because you left Emma in the bathroom, she ended up floating in the tub. As I faltered and looked down, Amy turned pale.
What? Are you saying Emma's no longer alive? You should have taken better care of her, you incompetent childless housewife.
You left her at our house without permission. Do you know how scared she must have been? I stood up abruptly from the sofa. Let me tell you, Emma was saved at the last moment. But if she had been found any later, it would have been too late. In fact, thanks to the paramedics' desperate efforts, my niece had been resuscitated. She still couldn't leave the hospital, but she had recovered enough to talk without any lasting effects. When Emma woke up, my husband and I held hands in joy.
Oh, she's alive. Don't scare me like that. Isn't this your fault for not managing things properly? I'll be claiming $50,000 in damages.
The moment she realized my niece was safe, Amy shamelessly tried to extort money from me. Don't be ridiculous. Misfortune was bound to happen sooner or later. I immediately spread out a large number of photos on the table in front of me. They showed rooms in a state of squalor and a refrigerator packed with expired, rotting food. All were pictures of Amy's house. What if a child gets injured or sick in such an unsanitary home?
What? Did you go into my house without permission?
I had no choice. You disappeared without telling anyone where you were going. Amy glared at me with hatred.
You, a woman who's never even raised a child, have no right to speak like that. A messy house is a sign of a true mother. It's common sense.
And then, with a mocking laugh, she looked at me condescendingly. Oh, really? So, mistreating a child is also a sign of a true mother? I played a video on my smartphone. It showed Emma playing with a friend at the park. In the video, Amy was seen yanking Emma's hair, raising her hand, and yelling at her whenever something displeased her.
Wait, where did you get this?
Seeing her abusive behavior captured on camera, Amy was visibly shaken. I'm not telling. It's a secret. While I was gathering evidence during Amy's trip, her neighbor, who was also her friend, came by with the neighborhood circular. At the door, I said, "I'm Amy's sister-in-law, so I'll take it." The friend seemed uneasy and asked,
Is Emma doing well?
Since I sensed that there was more to this, I decided to inquire further. The friend took out her phone and said,
A little while ago, I ran into Amy and Emma at the nearby park and took a video while we were playing together.
As she showed me the video, she added,
I've also heard loud crying from the child late at night.
Realizing that inappropriate parenting was a regular occurrence, I promised to protect my niece and received the video from her. Moreover, the paramedic who rescued Emma from the bathroom said, the bruises are only on her torso, where they can be hidden by clothing. I pulled out a photo from the stack on the table that showed my niece's body covered in bruises and pointed to the bluish marks. Amy scoffed.
You really don't know anything, do you? Kids get bruises from running around and playing.
She turned away dismissively. If she fell, there would be scrapes on her knees or arms. But bruises only on places that are hidden. That's a sign of abuse. In fact, Emma had been taken to my husband's hospital. He had seen similar injuries before and reported it to Child Protective Services. When Jason asked Emma, she tearfully admitted,
Mom did it.
Jason examined her, and he knows everything. Amy stammered.
Wait, but... No! You have to understand, that single parenting is tough. It's so stressful, and I can't get a break.
As if using my niece as a punching bag was a reasonable way to cope with stress. I was furious. Oh, really? Even after dumping your parenting responsibilities on me and going on an affair trip, you still need more breaks? I pulled out an envelope from under the pile of photos. It was Amy's diary, which I found at her house. It detailed her affair schedules, complete with photos. It was clear she went on the trip with a man.
You have no right to read someone's diary. That's a violation of privacy.
Amy screamed, spitting with rage as she tried to snatch it from my hand. Her husband, who was supposed to be at work, emerged from the back room and said,
I gave her permission.
He returned home urgently after I contacted him and a colleague took over his long-haul driving job. Amy said,
Harrison? What are you doing here?
She hadn't expected her husband to come back, and her eyes widened in shock. Harrison stormed towards her, standing tall right in front of her.
Not only did you deceive me, but you also neglected our child.
He seethed, visibly enraged. Amy used to tidy up the house and cook delicious meals when her husband came home, but she had been using a housekeeping service. Her diary even mentioned,
A husband who's never home and just brings money. Too easy and convenient.
"You've been pretending to be a good wife and mother only in front of your husband. Who's really the worst here?" I demanded. Both Harrison and I confronted her, and she was at a loss for words, clenching her teeth and looking down. Amy tried to soften her stance.
This was just a one-time thing. I was lonely because you were never home.
She said, looking up at Harrison with tearful eyes. But instead of forgiving her, Harrison shouted,
So you've been lying all along? You are good for nothing.
At that moment, my husband Jason emerged from the back room.
Jason!
Amy shrieked, shrinking back in fear.
Don't be fooled. This isn't the first time. She has 2 divorces, both due to her infidelity.
Jason revealed, pointing an accusatory finger at his sister. Harrison was bewildered.
She told me she divorced her previous husbands because of their debts and violence.
That's not true. I've heard the same story from my parents-in-law, I added. Jason continued.
She paid $40,000 in alimony for her affairs, which our father had to cover. And you still haven't learned, have you?
$40,000?
Harrison was shocked. I hadn't known about the large alimony payments, so I was appalled too. Looking at Amy with disdain, Harrison declared,
I've had enough of your lies. I'm getting custody of Emma.
and he threw the divorce papers on the table.
Wait! No, it wasn't like that. I just made a mistake. If we divorce, I won't get any inheritance. Do you want that?
Amy clung to Harrison, trying to manipulate him with the prospect of inheritance. But Harrison slapped her hand away.
Enough! You've abused our child and repeatedly cheated. You're cut off. You won't get any inheritance.
He shouted. Your parents said they never want to see you again. To them, you're a stranger now, I added. Amy turned pale and stammered, realizing she had lost everything. She tried to cling to her husband, but he pushed her away. She tried to make excuses for her brother, but he yelled at her. Finally, she fell at my feet, desperate.
We women should stick together, right? Please help me.
Amy, drenched in sweat with her hair in disarray, looked utterly pathetic. I don't want to be associated with someone like you. It's impossible to help each other when all you do is take advantage. I replied coldly. As the phone rang and a man's voice answered with hello, I snatched the phone from Amy. Hello? I'm Amy's sister-in-law. Did you know she's about to be divorced for the 3rd time and has a history of cheating? I began recounting everything to her lover. Amy screeched and tried to attack me, but Harrison and my husband restrained her, holding her tightly. Calmly, I continued talking to the man and then ended the call. You didn't tell him you were married, did you? He's furious and said he's breaking up with you. I handed the phone back to Amy, who frantically tried calling him again. But all she heard was, the number you have dialed is not in service. After about 30 attempts, she finally realized she had been blocked and began to wail. Harrison will get full custody of Emma. Plus, we're demanding $5,500 in child support and $50,000 in damages, totaling $105,000. I declared firmly. Amy's spirit broke completely, and she crumpled to the floor, sobbing. Suddenly, the sound of police sirens filled the air. My husband had called the authorities while we were in the other room. The police arrived and escorted Amy out. She screamed and cried, but neither Harrison, my husband, nor I made eye contact with her, leaving her in utter despair. That was the last image I had of Amy. After that, Amy and her husband divorced, with Harrison gaining full custody of Emma. He switched to a job that allowed him to be with his child more often, and Emma's smile returned. As for Amy, she's now in prison for endangering a child's life. According to her lawyer, she'll likely be there for several years. Even after her release, she won't be able to see her child, return to her family, and will be left alone, burdened with debt. On a happier note, I'm finally pregnant. We haven't asked about the baby's gender because either a boy or a girl can be a worthy successor in today's world. My husband also agrees that whether or not they take over the family business should be entirely their choice. I'm looking forward to a future with our child. How did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.